Adventurers! Welcome to the Last Draft. And welcome to another world building stream. It's not World Building Wednesday, but still a world building stream. Before I fully get started, I'm going to do my due diligence and share the stream out onto the social medias. What's up, Jericho? Do you hear the music playing since you are my first person in chat? I have a fun stream planned today. I wrote down just a list of I feel like I need to adjust the camera again. Basically a list of things that I have. Just like the general gist of this particular continent. Could be louder? Okay. Lovely. And if I need to be louder or if I'm good volume too. But thank you. It was made with the map was made with it's called Incarnate, a sort of map builder. It gives you all these different textures and assets that you can use, like those tree maps and those tree like assets. Twist. That's a little bit better. Just gotta be able to. I have my drawing tablet out today. We're gonna kind of bite a little bit from someone I love, Pirate Software, who will draw in MS Paint while he's explaining something. And so I'm going to bite his style a little bit, but instead of MS Paint, I'm going to use Clip Studio and probably be way worse at it because I've never done it before. So. Okay, good. Thank you. I still haven't. I got distracted. Oh, shit. I flopped my screens, and now I have to go. If I want my mouse to go left, I have to go to the right. Oh, no. But yes, if anybody in chat is a social media user, I've kind of fallen out of it, but I'm trying to get back into it. Bluesky just had a massive exodus. No? Genesis? Whatever. A bunch of people arrived, so I'm hoping to take advantage of that by posting more art and kind of want to do more in character. Like tweets as if I'm tweeting as the Last Draft Tavern. Join us for a world building stream where we talk about the world so far in the Last Draft universe. But yeah, I have a little sticky note here that is a decent amount of things that I wanted to talk about, to give it just a little more flavor and context to what surrounds the adventure city that the Last Draft is located in. And we'll get to that in just a moment. If anybody has any questions in chat about like world building or D&D or fantasy or anything like that in general, or not, whatever, if you have unrelated questions, I guess I can answer those too. Perfect. Okay, posting on Bluesky. Dying Musk app. Lovely. So, this area right here, and then I would say maybe actually zooming out a little bit here. Let's do a little. I'd say about that area is called the Heart Peak Wilds. I'm looking at the wrong camera. And that is where the that's where the Last Draft is, and where Respite is, which is this city right here in the very center, and also where the Heart Peak Wilds and the Heart Peak Mountains reside, and that's the mountains that make this area very magical and have these strange phenomenons, right? Now, what I think makes Respite a sort of interesting and especially dangerous place is that you have to the south here, this whole area to the south. Actually, you know, this box may be a little too big. Basically, everything south of these trees here. That's all the Empire. And the Empire is a... Hey, what's up, Fable? Appreciate the that you love the world. It's actually a very... it's a free and cheap and easy to use website called incarnate.com. It has all these like assets that you can use for free, and like different textures and stuff for like building land masses and whatnot. You can also use it if you get the subscription, which is like pretty cheap. You can even use it to make battle maps for your for when you're actually playing combat in D&D, which I've used it before. I used it actually for our one shot. So it's a very useful tool for a dungeon master. Here, I'll put it in chat, but actually I'll zoom in so that you can see what this is, how you spell Respite. R-E-S-P-I-T. But it is about, I would say it is on the larger side. Like, I kind of picture it as, I don't really know how to give an example, but like, maybe, well, actually, you know, maybe that's something that I need to explore, but I definitely feel like it is a large beacon of civilization. It's definitely multiple districts. I'm thinking probably around like 4 to 6 districts, so like a decently sized city. Whereas every other city or every other settlement in the Heart Peak Wilds is every other. Here, I'll put the chat. I'll put Incarnate in chat. Actually, here, I'll write it out on the screen. But my handwriting is really trash for someone who likes to do art. Whoops! I don't know what happened with that M there, but. So that's Incarnate. That's how you spell that. But really good map making. I've been using that for a really long time. When I first started with it, it was like not nearly as good as it is nowadays. Kind of lost my train of thought where I was talking about Rest, but yeah, definitely a decently sized city. I would say, you know, I actually kind of want to look up. Like, my hometown is like relatively small. I feel like that would maybe give me an idea. Oh, wow. That's a lot more than I was expecting. I guess it's over a really big area, too. I don't know. Maybe like 30,000 people? Like, not huge, but definitely a lot of people. I feel like part of the reason is that it's kind of hard to get to. The nature of where it is. There's a lot more monsters. Yeah, Jericho, I would say that you're probably right in the 50k to 100k population for Respite. Maybe leaning towards like a little less than that, but I definitely... It's also been... I feel like every year increases, like more and more people are constantly coming here. As more adventurers flock here, it becomes this like very famous city. It's expanding rapidly. And also, every time there is a war to the south, part of what Respite was founded on was people fleeing the oppression of the Empire, and setting up this city on the outskirts where the Empire can't have control because they're just not strong enough to deal with all the crazy stuff that happens in the Heartpeak Wilds. Now, as far as Fable asks, also, how do you come up with names for your cities? I've gotten the general name of the world at large, but I've not named cities/continents yet. It kind of varies. Like, as you can see, sometimes, I mean, honestly, I'm usually very lazy almost with my names. Like, and people are in the real world as well. I mean, like, how many freaking cities are there called Portsmouth, which is like the mouth of a port, you know what I mean? Or like Lakeview, because it's on a lake. Maybe that's, you know, boring and kind of lame, where you could be like, I don't know, give it like Vassandrala or some like high fantasy ass sounding name. But I kind of feel like when you give them that kind of very specific name based on like something cultural or based on like part of the landscape, it kind of grounds it a little bit more and gives it this kind of, I don't know, lived in feel, maybe? I don't know if that's the right term, but yeah. So I mean, like this one up here. Freaking the snowy place is on the edge of the snowy, like on the edge of the frozen pass. Is called Snowmelt because it's the least cold part of the frozen pass. So anyway, let me go through my notes. Did I answer the question about the size of Respite? I feel like we got there eventually. Okay, cool. Good question, Jericho. So Jericho says, is the area good for growing food like livestock or crops, or does most of that have to be imported? So I would say that probably the area immediately around Respite is like all farming, and like a lot of what like lower level adventurers quests involve is dealing with like the various like monsters or varmints or whatever that can appear on these farms. So like that's where you get your giant rats and your freaking rust monsters and that kind of stuff. I would also say that probably a lot of other stuff does just naturally get imported because there's so many there's so much trade constantly coming through Respite, just through the nature of how much material and artifacts and stuff passes through because of the mountain passes. But there's actually another cool detail about trading that we'll get to in a little bit. But I want to, like I mentioned before, that the thing that's really interesting about Respite is that it's getting this pressure from two different places, right? So you've got the pressure of, to the north, these magical mountains. You don't know how they were formed. You don't know what this like magical energy comes from, and it's constantly pouring out monsters that you have to deal with, or causing strange phenomenon that you have to deal with. And then to the south, you have this crumbling empire that is constantly warring and constantly seeking an edge. Basically just a knapsack full of despots and greedy dictators, all trying to like salvage this once great empire that is now just kind of slowly falling apart, and dealing with the fallout of like a constantly warring state. I do eventually, like I said, want to come up with different districts in Respite, where I can, once I do the lore book, I want to eventually have not even like, maybe I will have a couple actual like quests lined out that will be additions, but I do want to have just like kind of vague plot hooks about the various residents and the more prominent NPCs, the people that you see show up in the show, so that players and DMs can take this like little bit of plot and then kind of come up with their own take on it, you know, something that I would never think of, because one of the greatest things about D&D is that when you're collaboratively storytelling, you never really know what someone's gonna do, and usually people will surprise you. Almost always. So, I mean, people talk about how players have to constantly, throw out their battle plans when they don't work. That's all DMing is it's almost not even worth it to come up with a plan. You just like, here's some shit that's happening, go and interact with it, and then a lot of times your players will lead you to a story rather than you setting up these posts that you have to hit. It's like, no, we have to go this way or else the story won't get done. But yeah, so that's most of like what I like. I Respite just needs some like fine-tuning and tinkering, adding some more of the characters from the show, doing the districts, and I eventually want to get into like the nitty-gritty of the politics there, because that's also a huge aspect, I feel like, of that I want to get into, is how all the guilds are constantly vying for a piece of the pie, like and any other place where power runs through the streets so freely. And we're talking about not just metaphorical power, we're talking about physical artifacts of magic, and like crazy shit comes through Respite all the time. So you have to imagine that there's politics goes where there's power. So let's see. Jericho says, would leftovers from some of the monsters help the crops grow, or would it hinder any growth? Because most adventurers parties I've seen just kill the enemy and leave it to rot. Yeah, I guess it would depend on the creature. Yeah, I mean, if you killed like some sort of plant-based creature, or like a normal like beast creature, you'd probably be fine. But if you like a black dragon, if you killed that and just let its body rot, it would probably just turn into acid and sallow your fields. So maybe there's a specific there's this video game called Viscera Cleanup Detail, where the idea is that you are the cleaning crew that goes into like a space station or like a spooky supernatural warehouse or whatever, and you clean up after like whatever went horribly wrong and killed everybody. So you have to like take people's like arms and put them into the incinerator, and you gotta clean up the blood, and it's like a very chill cleaning game, but it's like you're like going through a place where an alien like destroyed. I don't really know how I got onto this topic. Oh right, the dragon thing. But yeah, so maybe there's a cleanup detail that goes out after all the adventurers have laid waste to whatever. Don't they kind of do something like that in Spider-Man 2? I don't know if it's Spider-Man 2, but the Falcon guy, I don't really know Marvel that well, but doesn't he like clean up after the Avengers, and that's how he gets the tech? Maybe that's how one of the adventurers gets their start as an adventurer. It's like they're a farmer just cleaning up after adventurers goes by, and they accidentally touch some cursed piece of a monster. Oh shit. Okay. So, talking more about the settlements in the Heartpeak Wilds. Snowmelt is one that I've been kind of tossing around for a while, and I just kind of had a flash of I'll say it, genius. So it is a settlement founded by Goliaths, who at first were very isolationist and refused to meet with outsiders. But over time, they began allowing adventurers. Here, let's draw a little. This is the Goliath house. All the adventurers, they're like, "Hey Goliaths, we want to come in." But then the Goliaths are like, "No, we're strong. Get out of here." I knew I was going to be terrible at this. But then over time, they begin allowing adventurers to use their city to rest when trekking into the Frozen Pass. And it wasn't long after that seeing an opportunity to make a profit, the Goliaths began to like offer their services as guides, which then develops into, I don't want to say a scheme, but yeah, let's call it a scheme, where they will offer wealthy thrill seekers an adventurer-esque thrill ride, like journey into the Adventurer's Pass for a huge sum of gold. So it's like kind of like how people will, hire gurus or whatever to take them up to Everest, and then they never get to the top or whatever. It's like the Goliaths take them out into the Frozen Pass. They get into a fight with like something that the Goliaths easily handle, and then these like rich lords can go back and be like, "Yes, I was an adventurer for a time." So I thought that was kind of amusing. But they have ever since that they have like a decent, they have a trade agreement with the guilds in Respite, and they like work together to the point where even the Adventurers Guild will like be hired to trek these wealthy individuals up to Snowmelt, who will then be trekked into the mountain passes to see a Yeti from a distance, be like, "Ooh, I was roughing it." Let's see here. Also, it is like generally believed that the folks of Snowmelt, generally believed by the Adventurers Guild and by adventurers, that the residents of Snowmelt know more about the Frozen Pass's nature than they let on, and that they maybe understand. So the biggest mystery about the Frozen Pass, for those who hadn't caught any of the other streams, is that in the very center of it, the very center, is a big ass blizzard. And it blocks the entryway for people to be able to basically get through the center. So basically there is a huge wall of blizzard in the very center that if you pass through it, within a few minutes you are a solid block of ice. And even the Goliaths can't survive in that blizzard for very long. I don't have a good name for it yet. Probably gonna be something like Eternal Blizzard, but like cooler sounding than that. But that's another tip to naming things, is like I'll take two things about something that are true, like there is a blizzard and it goes on forever, and then I will try to find words like synonyms that I can use to make it sound cool, or like I'll even look up the words in a different language, and if it sounds like cool, then I'll just use that. There's lots of different ways. Using Old English words, classic. Lovely. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Okay. The blizzard could be caused by a fallen old god, says Jericho. Maybe. Oh, sheet. I was trying to think of some kind of like ice pun, but I just couldn't get there. So, next up. Fable actually says, I do a lot of translation into Latin and Greek and such. My favorite race I've named is Nicta Volant, which is a combo of two different languages. That sounds cool. I like that. Yeah, honestly, combining different languages. I've been teaching myself Japanese for a really long time, so sometimes I'll use Japanese. I use a lot of Welsh words, kind of classic for fantasy. Gotta just throw a couple W's in there for no reason, you know. So over here, actually, is that the next one? Yeah, that's the next one. So I just talked about them in a recent video. This peninsula over here, this is a peninsula, it's called the Monoma Steppes. Jeez, my handwriting is just fucking terrible. And that is the where the sort of the home settlement of the Morai is. Now the Morai are a semi-nomadic people indigenous to the Heartpeak Wilds. It's said that in their stories that their peoples have lived in the wild since before the world flare that essentially reset civilization. The Morai traverse across the entirety of the wilds, offering trade to its few residents via the herd drive. Now, this is something that was in the episode where I forget what the title was, but it was where Quillum the Wizard was talking about the energy of the Heart Peak Pass and how it is different than the magical energy that feeds the ley lines that gives everybody magic, essentially. So the herd drive is essentially how they kind of like make their money and trade for goods that they need. It is a massive cattle drive of the largest bovine out there, which is a creature I created called the Shaghorn. And I kind of imagine it as a mix between a hippo and a longhorn cow, or not, what the fuck are they called? No, Highland cow, of a Highland cow. So hippo and a Highland cow, but about the size of an elephant. So really huge, really furry, big ass horns. But they also have really short and stumpy legs, so they can't run really fast. They are, the Morai have sort of evolved around domesticating these animals and essentially driving the herd around the Heart Peak Wilds and trading them like their horns and their coat and their meat and stuff to settlements, because that's how big these things are. You can't just it would all the shit would rot and go bad before a whole family, like a single family, could use it. But they travel across the continent, not the continent, but this section of this continent of the Heart Peak Wilds, and whatever that they don't have in the Monoma Steppes and they need, they will trade for it with the Shaghorns. And because the herd drive is always on the move, and I kind of think of it as like a sort of rotating, it's like a rotating military service almost, but it's not military, obviously, where when you become an adult, like once every 5 years or within 5 years, you have to go back on the herd drive. So the herd goes around and stops at different settlements. Will slaughter the beast, dress it, like take all the stuff out and give it to all the people that paid for it, or to just like distribute it to their own people. And then they move on to the next settlement, because they're constantly on the move, because the Shaghorns are fed upon by the larger creatures that inhabit the Heart Peak Wilds. So you can imagine that it can be dangerous to stay in one place with a herd creature that will bring large creatures to your village. So the herd drive is always constantly on the move. But I imagine that even the occasional dragon will come out and try to snatch one of these guys. And when that happens, I feel like, memorist! Don't worry, we're just getting started. I'm still only on the second point that I'm making. Maybe third. But so we're talking about the Morai, which are a semi-nomadic people that reside over here in the Monoma Steppes. And they have domesticated these creatures called Shaghorns that they sell and trade with the different settlements across the Heart Peak Wilds. Okay, let's do this. Heart Peak Wilds. Let's make this one a different color though, so it's a little easier to see. So, the Morai they are currently in the current canon, or the current present day, are making their way back eastwards from resupplying and dropping off all the goods that they traded at their settlements that are within the Monoma Steppes. And it is of at least the Barkeep's opinion that they may have secret knowledge on the formation of the Hard Peak Mountains. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Varnish, which is the city down here. It's a lakeside city. And Varnish is southeast of Respite and an offshoot of the Mirai. The people of Varnish were one of the first settlements on the continent after the World Flare. So the World Flare happens, kind of resets civilization, basically destroys this continent besides the Mirai. And some of the Mirai that survived ended up settling this town, and it's basically been around since the beginning and considered to be one of the oldest cities by people who are in the know. I would say probably most of the world does not really know that this city exists, or like if you're like a nerd, if you're like a Heart Peak Wilds nerd, people would maybe know about it, but it kind of gets overshadowed by Respite, and they kind of prefer that. Often used by travelers on their way to the port city, which is, I want to put a port city over here at some point. Because, God, my handwriting is trash, dude. Trash. I gotta get better at this if I want to hear. Let's get. Whatever. I wanted to maintain the Heart Peak Wilds as a very limited settlement place because of how dangerous it is. But I also still want there to be places for people to go, for players to have places to explore in this like area. So I feel like the Respite and this unnamed port city that we'll eventually have are going to be the largest cities on this section of the continent. Talking more about Varnish, so the Lucent Lake, which is what this lake is called. Terrible. So Lucent Lake is fed by the melting ice caps of the mountains at the border of the frozen pass. So the lake is always incredibly cold, but also doesn't freeze at a normal like temperature that water would freeze at. So often, even in the dead of winter, it is not frozen over. And then something about, I don't have that much written about this place. It's sort of a mysterious kind of small stop. I want to add more. There's a lot of it that I'm kind of keeping secret on purpose. Many adventurers and travelers experience strange phenomena around the lake, such as seeing strange lights or hearing singing voices in the woods. So a lot of people kind of think it's haunted. But I also kind of think that just from how cold the lake, it also kind of like makes the landscape around it very cold. It just like is this very weird, ethereal kind of place. One of those places where like it's surrounded by woods and it's like it's like a small lake town, but have you ever been in those woods that are like, you can just feel their age? Yes, Memra says, what you don't have to tell us, what you don't tell us, you don't have to retcon later. Yeah, that's one of the problems with building something as you're going to, is like, oh man, when I say something, it's like, I can't really back out on it. That is to say, you know, it's possible some of this stuff will change or morph over time, which is, you know, that's how stories happen. Speaking more on the port city, I have a couple of notes like written here. I haven't really, so I haven't really delved into religion a lot as far as I haven't made any videos really even about clerics. I made that one stand-up bard video about clerics. I don't think I've even had any clerics as characters yet. That's because I want to avoid the D&D pantheon if possible, because I'm like kind of using the D&D cosmology, right? The whole like you know, the inner planes and the outer planes and stuff. But you know, I don't want to be attached to that. Like, I don't want to be stuck to that. So I've been avoiding getting into gods really until I can kind of come up with what I want as far as religion in this world. So I do think that this world will be religion light. So there are clerics, there are paladins. Actually, I feel like because paladins can just kind of be an ideal, right? So specifically, clerics are less prominent, and I wanted to make this port city to be one of the most leading religious cities in the world. Or maybe, yes. And my thought process is because of the proximity to the freaking Shadow Pass, where there's constantly undead and weird curses seeping out and just bad shit nonstop. You know, it's the connection to the Shadowfell. So I think it would make sense for there to be like a religious city, to be like, oh, we stand against the evil freaking Skeleman. We don't want to deal with no Skeleman. And the Skeleman's like, but why? I just want to be your friend. Let me love you. And then he tells all of his little skeleton friends, hey, they want to be our friend. Let's go hug them. Look at all the skeleton friends. Maybe, you know, maybe that's a thing. Maybe there's like constantly fucking battles going on here, and that's why trade. I actually kind of really like that idea. I'll put that in my notes. Skeleman's all like, hey, let me be friends with you. But they have a bone to pick with Skeleman, Memorist. Go sit in the bad pun corner of the bar. Jericho asks, would that also mean that warlocks are rare? I would say yes, but maybe not as rare, because it's not limited to gods. Like, you can be like a lesser deity or a lesser sort of Because, you know, Fae, like an Archfey isn't necessarily a god, or at least I wouldn't put them in the same level as a god, but you can have an Archfey as your patron. Memorist does live in the bad god pun corner. There's a plaque of them there. Ah, you just said it! You just said plaque before I even read it! That's hilarious! Oh my god, that's great. I can't believe that popped up right after I said it. That's so funny. But yeah, I would say warlocks are probably more rare too. But I kind of want there to be like 3 gods, or like 3 religions, let's say. Let's not even call them gods. Let's just say there's 3 religions that kind of span the world, and I want them to be constantly like working together, but also trying to like one up each other, kind of like everything else in this world. Everyone's just trying to get ahead. Everyone's trying to be number one and get their like philosophy, their ideology, they're just trying to get their slice, right? So that's kind of when I think about this port city. I want it to be a sort of theology-led, like theocracy almost. So I imagine it. I have it written here actually, where it perhaps had been a second settlement established by the adventurers of Respite that was then lost in a war with the Empire, because hundreds of years ago, when Respite was founded, there was a war called the Adventurers' War. That was basically a war between the adventurers and between the Carthan Empire. But I basically want it to have been a settlement put there by the adventurers, taken over by the Empire, and then treaties were signed. So war stops, but the Empire gets to keep this port city here, with like maybe some kind of like heavy tariff or some shit for goods leaving the port. So Respite gets this port city that they can make some cha-ching off of, but they get to end the war, right? So then as the Empire begins to crumble and these cities begin to fall, because it's so far and requires, you know, like they can't send soldiers up through these woods here because it belongs to the adventurers. So to get men and supplies and stuff, the only way is by boat. And which I think eventually over time they just lose the power to be able to do that, and then the city slowly becomes this like theocratic city-state almost over time. Memora says, common goal, but each one is quite sure they're the right and others are not so much. Exactly. Yes, very much. Jericho asks, so like the sky, sea, and land for religion. I don't know if it will be... That's a good question, you know, like, because a lot of D&D gods have like domains, right? So there's like the god of justice or whatever, what have you. I don't know if they will have domains like super defined like that. Maybe it'll be more like Greek shit where it's like he's the god of thunder and or like freaking Poseidon. It's like he's the god of the sea, but also horses. Yeah, it's definitely something I have to think on. I have a sort of, I have plans for the gods. I just have to ruminate on them a little bit more. But I want to start doing more god and religion stuff and getting writing clerics into more episodes, because I love my first character the only character I ever completed a game with was a cleric. So I have a special place in my heart for clerics. So, finished talking about the port city. I had a couple of notes here about the actual Carthan Empire, which is just sort of this outside, like kind of background lore right now, but I want to eventually very much. It's gonna be a huge part, I feel like, of the lore book and of understanding the nature of this continent. But essentially, the Carthan Empire at one point spanned most of the world, but its last remnants of the empire exist only on this continent. So, and only on this. Let's go with blue for the empire. Actually, let's go with gold. So, only this section, actually, this including this island down here. That's Carthan Empire. Maybe I should be making separate layers for all this. But no, we don't do that. We live dangerously. We put everything on one layer. And you know what? I was going to say it's not even a vector layer. I lied. It is a vector layer. So, the Carthan Empire is even sort of the beginning of Respite. Because of the way I imagine that Respite came to be. I think I've said it in streams before. It is inspired by the story of labor uprisings in the late 1800s and early 1900s in America, where steel manufacturers, railroad workers, and coal miners all kind of rose up and literally physically fought, in some cases, police and military and private detective agencies that were hired by the state to do violence to them. It's something I come from a union family, and I also lived in an area of the Northeast where you could see the effects of like all of that still to this day. So I see Respite as being had once been a attempt by the Empire to, after the World Flare, to settle and tame the Heart Peak Wilds. And so they create this town and they fill it with adventurers and prisoners and maybe even political prisoners, like that kind of stuff, and force them to go into the wilds and bring back relics and basically take as much as you can, as much wealth and resources as you can out of this land for our great empire, or for like the re-expansion of our great empire after it was mostly destroyed. And then after dozens of years of this, the adventurers eventually throw off their yoke. Basically like, we will not do this for you anymore. Come at us. And then there's this huge ass war called the Adventurers' War, and then that's how Respite becomes its own sort of city-state. So Australia, says Jericho. Yeah, basically. At least the like sending your prisoners there kind of thing. I don't know that much about Australian history, but that's basically all I know, because I did the same thing with America, right? You need some far-off, dangerous place to send all your prisoners. You can't keep them living with normal people. They're prisoners. But nowadays, Karth is you can't even really call it an empire. They still say Little Texas too. Memorist says that is true. Also, Little Texas, where you can't even call it an empire anymore. Rather, it's a loose collection of despots, constantly arguing and warring, and with a weak central figure that rarely leaves her gilded tower, which would be the Empress, who I don't think I have a name for yet. Actually, maybe I do. I might have had one in the. Was it the mom adventurer? Where the guy with the Midwestern mom who's geez, kids, keep your cantrips to yourselves. For Pete's sake. I think maybe I might have said it in that one. I don't know, but I'll find that out. Find out eventually. Also, the Retrar siblings, which is the current war that is happening, the Twin Cities War, is because of these two siblings, and so the idea is that I think it's right here. Actually, I was gonna change the map up a little bit. Let's maybe I won't do that. I might bring this side in a little bit more. So have it come in, and then this all be water over here. But basically, so the idea is that there was one big city that took up two peninsulas, right? It was called the Lathe. Peninsula. I think it's because I get impatient when I'm writing, and I'm just like, God, come on, let's just go. And for dozens and dozens of years, it's always been one city, and maybe even was the largest port city in the empire. Then present day comes, and there are two siblings whose parents both die. Maybe they're assassinated. Who knows? Not super important right now. But the two Retronar siblings cannot decide who should control this huge swath of land, and so they decide to just split it down the middle. Like a fucking sitcom. So they split Lathe down the middle, and it becomes, instead of the Lathe Peninsula, it becomes North Lathe. Oops. Let's get a T in there. And South. Oops. Lathe. And that's how. So then they do this, and then over the years, as they're both running their cities, both overcome by greed and bickering like siblings do, the whole city feels their basically sibling rivalry and suffers because of it. And I just think that that's hilarious. I just had that idea this morning of literally cutting the city. I call it the Twin Cities War because the idea is that they're the same city. And I had that idea this morning of well, how did they become that they both, if they're siblings, one of them, depending on, even if it goes through birth, whoever the oldest was, right, would get the thing normally. But I just thought the idea was their last act of working together was, fine, you take this half and I'll take this half. Meh. And so that just amuses me greatly. And it's also just kind of horrifying because I feel like that sounds like something that would actually happen in like medieval Europe history. It's like just a squabble and hundreds of thousands of people were affected by it because of a squabble between royals or whatever. I mean, I guess that's kind of what World War I was, right? It's just like a bunch of royal noble people who are all related wanting to use guns on each other. It's a good question. Memorous asks, how long has the city been split? Maybe they're like older. So maybe if they did it when they were like 18 or something, or like in their 20s, maybe they're in their 60s. So maybe it's been like 40 or 50 years or something. I like the idea that it's been a long time. Maybe not though. I might think about it and decide that it's like maybe only been 20 years. So even so, the people are still, it's like still fresh in some people's memory, and also quite frustrating to the people that live there. It's like, could you imagine? It's almost kind of like a fucking East and West Berlin thing too, where it's like you before the war probably have to present papers or whatever at the gates to be able to get into the north part of the city, and now probably can't even get into the north part of the city. I'm gonna put that in my notes too. Figure out how long city has been split. But I want to kind of do what I did with Lath and with the Retronar siblings. I want to do that with all of the Carthan Empire, where each city is like its own weird little fucked up place, where there's like kind of like I want there to be like a main theme of fuckery. So like this one, like the one with the twins is like about like generational wealth and greed splitting families apart, right? And then maybe one of these could be like, I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but I kind of want each city to feel like it has its own particular problem and quests that can be going on in there. That's a cool idea. I like that, Memorist. Memorist says, if it's been a particularly long time, they may actually speak separate dialogues of the same language, so they can tell if someone's from the worst side by just hearing it when nobody else can, which is really funny. I like that idea. I'm gonna put that in my notes too. Different dialects? Question mark. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the place I've explored the least in my own head, which is up here. Boop. So these are all. Let's go with. Well, they're blue. Free cities of Lucara. So I was inspired. I don't know how many anime fans are in here. I feel like the crossover between D&D and fans and people who like anime, it's not a full circle, but I feel like there's a good amount of overlap over there. But if anyone has seen the anime Kino's Journey, I think is what it's called. It's about a kid with a talking motorcycle and guns. He dual wields, he kimbos pistols. He travels around on his talking motorcycle, and he like visits different cities. And each city has like a very specific thing. Like there was one that was a city that's on rolling wheels, that's like constantly moving. And they come across a city that has like a big ass wall, and they're just like, hey, we have to keep going. It's part of our city's thing is that it keeps moving, so we're gonna crush your wall and just go past you. Sorry, unless you move your wall, we're gonna just crush it. And they're all like, no, don't crush our wall, and they like start shooting rockets at it, but it doesn't do anything. It just rolls over their walls and crushes it. Like blows up, like crushes a bunch of buildings and stuff too as it's like rolling. But anyway, it has like a bunch of stuff like that, a bunch of different cities that all have like a very specific trait to them, and that's kind of what my plan is with Lucera, is to give them just kind of unique aspects to them that each gives them their own different vibe. I see Lucera as being a place that's known across the world as a very harsh environment to live in, but also one of the freest places, free from like governmental pressures that you can possibly be. Yeah. Oh, the other thing the other reason I want to leave Lucera a little more vague. I also kind of want to expand it a little bit more. I want to like pop it out further this way. Maybe take that island back down. I want it to be a little bit bigger because I want to eventually. I mean, the whole goal of the Last Draft is to collaborate with other world builders and other creators, right? And I want to give them a space in which they can just kind of go ham, right? And I can just be like, here, you can put us whatever you want here, go for it. And so that's one of the other reasons I want to leave Lucera pretty empty, and then also just kind of slowly fill it with these like, oh, here's this little city here that has this weird quirk about it. Here's this city with this weird quirk about it. And we can just kind of slowly fill it in as it goes. I think that's kind of something I'm going to be doing with a lot of the different continents that I create for this world, is leaving it free, because I want to leave space for collaborating with other D&D creators so that people can leave their mark on this world and, you know, bring a variety to it that, you know, I couldn't do by myself. Because everyone has a different perspective. You know, everyone's creativity feels different. And I want this to be a very diverse, unique, interesting world. Sound cool, right? Does anybody have any queries, comments, or questions about anything that we talked about this day, or any questions about world building, or any questions about like plans for the Last Draft in the future, or anything like that? It's like I love how, you know, D&D has all these different worlds, all these books and stuff that have their own different writers and whatnot, and I would love to create that sort of multiverse for the Last Draft, where like the islands. No, the islands I have not really done anything with these islands yet. I think it probably is going to end up being some kind of like dotted with cities. I was thinking of a sort of maybe like an island kingdom or something like that. Fable Rain asked, which D&D edition would this be made for, or is it adapted for multiple TTRPGs types? I would say it's inspired by D&D, but the goal is to allow it to be vague enough that people can use it for any role-playing system. I actually have I've been working on a role-playing system for a while that I'm slowly piecing together, but it's not really anywhere near even being able to be play tested. But it is eventually something that I am interested in creating. Jericho says, do the adventure guilds have names? I'll probably say there is the Adventurers Guild itself is like one entity, and if you were referring to a specific one, you'd be like, oh, the Respite Adventurers Guild or the Lathe Adventurers Guild or whatever. You would just say whatever settlement it was in. The other guilds, there are other guilds in Respite. Those are different. So there's like a trade guild, there's a merchant guild, there's a artisans guild, that kind of stuff. Fable says, any tips for creating a TTRPG system or inspiration used in making yours? Good question. I would say playing as many role-playing systems as you can is your best bet. And then taking them apart, taking what mechanics you really like and using those and pairing them with other ones. Mine's sort of built around the idea of eliminating classes and races, and instead you are given experience points and you can buy everything with them. You can buy your abilities, you can increase your skills, and it's not limited by class. So you could theoretically make a like spell sword type of character, or if you wanted to, you could make a political character who has no combat experience at all, and all of his abilities are geared towards talking, and he would die in a combat. I want it to be something very flexible that you can kind of use for everything, but it is a process. I've never built a role-playing system before, so it's definitely a process. I need to play some more role-playing systems, honestly. I don't know about y'all, but I've not even bothered looking into D&D 2024 or whatever even they're even calling the new D&D. I'm probably gonna do it eventually. It's just, I don't know. I've just not been hearing great things, I guess. Little guy here. Well, that's all I really have for today. I feel like I laid out a good amount of lore, and there's a lot of stuff that I just need to get down on paper, really. And maybe one of these days I'll do a stream where I adjust the map a little bit more and start putting more cities down. I want to get this to a good point where people can start actually using it to play in. Member says it's a lot. Yes, it is a lot. It's not easy making a game from scratch. appreciate y'all coming in and hanging out with me while I, honestly help me work through some thoughts myself. Member says, how much is the lore of your system apt to influence your system and vice versa? So, that's a good question. I kind of talked about it a little bit in the beginning. Or I talked about it, I guess, when I was talking about the D&D gods and stuff. But, inherently, Last Draft is sort of tied to D&D. Because it's a fantasy show inspired by D&D, right? And I make a lot of D&D references and stuff. But the ultimate goal is to make this channel just a fantasy, like makes fantasy shows, and maybe wouldn't have to necessarily be tied to Dungeons and Dragons. So I am conscious when I am writing the lore of the world that I will eventually want to not remove the D&D influence, but not be heavily tied to it, so that I can just have the flexibility that I want. I love the fantasy genre. It's like basically the only version of stories that I like. Every book I've ever read has been a fantasy novel ever since I was like reading Aragon and shit like that when I was a kid. And I really thought after Game of Thrones, like during Game of Thrones, I was like, oh, Game of Thrones is going to make fantasy huge. We're going to get this like huge golden era of fantasy like Marvel's getting with superheroes. And then Game of Thrones fucked it up for everybody. And I guess we got like the Rings of Power and House of Dragons. Rings of Power was boring, and I just can't get back into Game of Thrones because it hurt me too much in the beginning. So, anyway, I want to make a space where I can make all kinds of fantasy content. Fable says, any tips for making a fantasy style channel like what you do? I don't know if that's too broad a question. Well, to be honest, I don't have a great answer. I think, I was looking for something that utilized all my skills that I've accrued over a long time of trying to make YouTube videos. And specifically doing the things that I love to do, which is voice act, write dialogue, and write and world build, and mix in D&D too. So I just basically took the things that I loved and was sick of not making anything and just started. And if you look at my first video on this channel, there was not even anything on the wall behind me. It was just a blank white wall. And then eventually I added the shelves with the glasses on it. So really, more than even like how to make a channel, I think really you just gotta start. You don't even have to, just start writing, start writing down ideas. Came to me when I was working at a bar and had like a funny weird thing happen to me with a customer, and thought I was like, oh, well, why don't I every D&D like game starts in a tavern. There's a lot of different stories you can tell in a tavern. Why don't I be a bartender in a fantasy? And that's basically all it was. But I would say just find what you like to do and just start doing it and be consistent. That's really the biggest thing, is being consistent, which sucks because it's like the hardest part. It's like, and I've known this for 20 years, basically. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. I'm not that old. 12 years of doing YouTube. It's like, you just need to be consistent and just start doing stuff, putting stuff out there. You know, the first few months that I was posting, I was psyched to get even like 50 views. And now we're coming up on almost a million total views on YouTube. I think we're at like 775 or something on all the videos. So one of my goals is to hopefully hit 1 million channel views by the end of the year. But yeah, just find your thing. And the other thing about being consistent, rather than not even just that you're more likely to get an audience, you'll just get better. Like, it used to take me freaking an hour probably to film one episode because I was struggle with getting it set up or struggle with my lines. But now I can bust out a video in 20 minutes. Member said, congrats on getting this far. Thank you. You are part of one of the many reasons that I've gotten this far because of your support and everyone who has been like really kind. And it's been fun commenting and talking to people, and you know, having people actually like look at something you wrote and be like speculating on it is such a crazy feeling, you know. Because, you know, like I said, I love fantasy books, and I grew up speculating, like, oh, how's Gregor the Overlander gonna get out of this one? And now people are like, oh, I wonder, is the Barkeep also an isekai guy who got stuck in this world? Or you know, people commenting about past videos on episodes that are currently coming out. It's been such a blast, and I'm very appreciative. Anyway, I do have work tomorrow, so I should end this stream, but it was a pleasure working on this with you and like having you guys chill while I kind of talked through all the lore. And honestly, I think I really helped myself too. I feel like I kind of focused a little bit. I think I'm actually gonna save this drawing too, because it kind of helps me a little bit with just the context. So thank you all so much, appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next quest. Bye. Shit.